Welcome to Stormwatch by Grey Noise Intelligence. Each week, we drop the latest info on what's happening at Grey Noise and Census, take a look at a roundup of important, timely cybersecurity topics, toss out some expert opinions, and drop the occasional conspiracy theory. On today's pod, we're joined by Horizon 3 AI's Zach Hanley to talk about all things in state-of-the-art penetration testing. Nate joins the Peanut Gallery for an in-depth look at a recent spate of big tech trouble in Little China, which we will really get to today, promise, pinky swear.
Hey, Bob.
Including
Who's joining us?
Zach.
Okay, just checking.
I said Zach.
No, you didn't. That's okay.
I said Zach Hanley. I did.
Carry on.
I did. I said Horizon 3 AI. I did.
Then the second time. But we're
the second time.
Okay.
You know, it's fine.
I said, I'm done. All right, I'm done. Well, it's the eclipse.
And that's how fast it takes for us to go off the rails.
I am blaming it on the eclipse.
Happy Tuesday.
We promise we will get to China. It's okay. And we will also be covering our usual tool time, tags, and Kev Roundup segments. But before we do that, discussing all this is me and my co-hosts. And I got to get my thing up here because we have to have music. Mine's actually very prescient for this particular thing today. So, Kimber, good morning.
Good morning.
Salt Lake, I assume, still?
Correct.
Okay, very cool. So van life is kind of like on pause.
Let's not talk about it. That's a sensitive subject.
Ooh.
Okay.
I just read an article this week about how van life is overrated, mostly because of showers. Or the lack of showers.
I never had a problem with the shower situation. You get the Planet Fitness subscription, you're key. But I will say the decision fatigue of van life, it's been nice to just kind of grow a little bit of moss.
Okay.
Cool.
About it.
Yeah, it's warm and it's comfy. It's safe. That's cool.
It's a sensitive subject.
All right. So to get to a proper question, if you had to choose a theme song that plays every time you enter a room, what would it be?
Like, in my most idealized version of myself, I thought about this a lot last night, right before falling asleep, and I had like a lot of delusions of grandeur. So like, you know, when you go to karaoke night and somebody finally chooses the Journey song that all of the white people love and know all of the lyrics to, and it's just like dun, 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 dun. Like the opening, that part.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, because it
I
really
like that.
You just want everyone to stand up and start shouting when you walk into a room.
like sometimes. Time.
Very cool. All right, Emily, good day to you as well.
Hello. Good morning.
And same for you, if you had to choose a theme song that plays every single time you enter a room, what would it be?
I also thought a really long time about this yesterday, and I circled around a lot of options, but the thing that I went to first, like my gut says Dies Irae from Mozart's Requiem, Case 626. Like it's just really dramatic.
Wow, goes with the fancy ones.
I want the drama. Alternatively, like Party Up by DMX, because it's kind of relatable. But
she's diverse. She's
man, I feel
She's too good. She's too good for us.
Very, very much so. Very much so. Speaking of not too good for us, Glenn, if you had to choose a theme song that plays every time you enter a room, what would it be?
So mine's a vast departure from Emily's. So the Curb Your Enthusiasm theme song.
Glenn, that's perfect for you.
Yeah,
because
that is actually perfect.
I feel like my whole life is just one long episode of these awkward situations. And not understanding these social norms that are just pushed upon us. So that's my answer. Which is, like I said, 180 from Emily's.
Makes perfect sense to me, too, for that one. Wow. As noted in the intro, I guess twice or not at all. I have no idea. I can't wait to listen to that again and see if I really screwed up. We have a special guest today, Zach Hanley. Welcome to the pod, Zach.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
We will introduce you properly in just a moment. But before that, you have to answer, since you agreed to be, like, you silly person, you agreed to be on this thing. If you had to choose a theme song that plays every single time you enter a room, what would it be?
My first thought, and I'm going to go with it, was Drowning Pool, Let the Bodies Hit the Floor, because it embodies my chaotic nature and it gets you hyped. So that's what I'm going with.
I like it.
Damn.
I had no idea. Like I do try to pick ones that are revealing of character, and I had no idea that this would be as deeply revealing of character as it's been across the board. Cool. So we will actually dig into a bit more about that later. And making all this possible, and the only reason it goes as smoothly as it does, barring my mistakes, as it is our amazing Overwatch, Ashley. Good morning, Ashley. And if you had to choose a theme song, what would it be? Thank you for being the Golden Girl. That's really cool. Aw, that's really nice. Mine is playing in the background. I will make it up a little bit. Anyway, I'm going to stop it now because we're.
I expected it to be the theme, the Yakety Sax theme song or something.
I appreciate that. This is the theme song. So this is the "I Am the Doctor" from Matt Smith's Doctor Who season.
I was going to ask if it was Doctor Who.
Yeah,
but specifically Matt Smith Doctor Who.
Specifically Matt Smith Doctor Who, and my youngest son and I are just huge Matt Smith fans, and this is one of our favorite songs of all time, including from Doctor Who. So that's and it's just very loud and bombastic, and I have no idea why I would pick a loud and bombastic song to be jumped into a room for. Can't imagine. All right, so we are going. Oh, and we have a cool layout. I got to put the cool layout up here. So as everyone knows, this is the internet, and this is a podcast and everything. So like, mash, subscribe, all things, please do that. I should probably get better at saying that, but just do that. Helps other people find us, and I think we do a good job. So it's pretty cool. I want to take a moment really quick. We the cybersecurity community and humanity lost a really great person on last week, and I wrote this this is the second obit I've actually had to write this year, which is kind of rough, but I would like to do that and just basically do a really quick thing for Ross. Let me get up to my thing. I actually have to read it because if I don't do that. So for folks that don't know, and let me get over to the actual real screen here. There he is. Ross J. Anderson, distinguished professor of security engineering at the University of Cambridge and a highly respected figure in the field of computing, passed away at his home in Cambridge on March 28th, 2024 at the age of 67. His contributions to the field were vast and varied, and they encompassed machine learning, cryptographic protocols, hardware reverse engineering, and breaking ciphers, among many other areas. Anderson was not only a brilliant academic, but a very passionate advocate for individual privacy and security. He was known for his ability to communicate complex ideas with clarity and was an inspiring mentor to generations of graduate students at Cambridge and beyond. His work extended beyond academic realm into political activism, where he was instrumental in shaping digital rights advocacy in the UK and the EU. His seminal textbook, Security Engineering, is widely recognized as one of the most important works in the field and has influenced countless professionals and academics. His legacy includes the Lovelace Medal, awarded to him by the British Computer Society in 2015. It reflects his outstanding contributions to the field of computing. Ross's death is a significant loss to the academic and security communities. His work has left an indelible mark on the field, and his influence will continue to be felt for many years to come. His commitment to education, privacy, and security, combined with his technical expertise, made him a unique and powerful voice in this world of information security. And for folks that aren't aware of some of the stuff that he's done beyond the book, what I've got on the screen now, and we have a link to, it's the Measuring the Cost of Cybercrime. It's probably the first truly comprehensive academic understanding of the cost, trying to quantify it, trying to come up with ways to quantify it. It's one of the first things I read from Ross's, and I've been following him ever since. And one of the things I'm going to miss most about him is that he goes to the Economics of Information Security conference every year, and he had the best write-ups of it of all time, and means I didn't have to read and listen to a whole lot to feel like just what he does. So I just want to say rest in peace, Ross. We're gonna miss you. A lot of us are gonna miss you. I think, Emily, you've actually read through, you've poured over the security engineering book before too, if I'm not mistaken. So you probably have a little bit of wow, I can't imagine he's gone too.
Yeah.
All right,
Definitely.
we are going to make it a lot happier though right now. We're going to get from the depressing things. Zach is going to bring it. So again, Zach, welcome. Could you tell folks just a little bit about yourself before I get into some questions about you?
Yeah. So I got my start in cybersecurity after college by joining the military. And in the military, I did the Air Force cyberspace operations career field, and stayed in the military for 4 years, did a bunch of on offensive on net operations. But then when I got out, I went to work for a government contractor doing a lot of the same mission sets. And then a bunch of my friends from the military were talking one day about, hey, like, we think pen testing is automatable. And I was like, you guys are crazy. Like, this is too complex, impossible. And they're like, just come join our company, Horizon 3. We're going to try to do it. And so that's how Horizon 3 got started. A bunch of nerds trying to do the impossible. So I kind of equate it similar to the same way Elon Musk tried to make self-driving cars a thing. Like, yeah, it seemed impossible at first. And then slowly over time, they just got better and better at doing that thing. So we're working hard towards trying to automate pen testing and expanding into just general security controls validation. So,
And you are chief attack engineer, is that correct?
That's correct. It's a made up title.
It is not. It's an amazingly cool title. What are you talking about? That's an awesome title.
Yeah. So what that means basically is I'm just one of the guys on the team, and I happen to be very passionate about security. So I'm the one always posting all these blogs and getting after emerging threats. So I was dubbed the chief attack engineer after all that. So yeah.
Suddenly the deception engineer sounds less cool.
Maybe we need a chief deception engineer doesn't sound as cool as chief attack engineer. So I wanted to also give you a chance to talk a bit more about what y'all do there, because I'm going to get the screen back up for everybody to see. You have a really, really cool product, the Node Zero platform. Can you talk to folks about that? Because I'm not sure everyone knows what that is, and I think they should know what it is. It's actually really cool.
Yeah. So at Horizon 3, our product is called Node Zero, and Node Zero is a pretty well encompassing product these days. At first, it started off with trying to automate what people call internal pen testing or assume breach pen testing, where you basically start from an internal network. That's how it started. But over time, we've increased the scope of what we actually look at to now cloud is super important these days. So we're looking at Azure and AWS and anything you have on the internet. So we have external, cloud, internal, we have phishing, we have Active Directory password audits. So essentially the product, as much as we can, try to automate different aspects of security audits, penetration testing, whatever you want to call it, because I think it's a pretty confusing term in the industry these days. But so, yeah, the product will go out there, try to mimic the same things attackers are doing or penetration testers are doing, kind of enumerate the attack surface, find and fingerprint applications, look for misconfigurations, vulnerabilities, see if there's any credentials laying around, and try to exploit those. And we don't just stop at exploitation. We actually then go on to post-exploitation. We'll try to load malicious code and pivot around your environment, and then automatically give you a report detailing, hey, like, these vulnerabilities are actually important vulnerabilities because we proved out this attack path leading to what you consider your critical business data. So it's not going to tell you, you might have this like 9.8 CVE over here that a traditional vulnerability scanner will tell you, hey, you need to fix this. Well, we might tell you that this subset of vulnerabilities are the really important ones because they led to these impacts in your environment.
So when someone deploys this, does it drop in with zero? So like, you have a long history, like you just described to us, of doing real penetration testing, which is like you go in with sometimes with zero knowledge or often with zero knowledge and work from there. Like, so is that really how this works? It can drop in with zero knowledge and start to do all these things?
That's right. So it really, the only thing you have to tell it is the scope. So in a lot of cases, that's like an IP address range or top level domain names. And from there, we'll go and enumerate it. And that's the only knowledge you give the product.
Wow, that is like super impressive. And you mentioned a lot of the steps. Like, all of those steps are actually automated? Like, none of you are going in there and like mechanical turking it all the way through?
Yeah, it's zero humans in the loop. Wow. It's all automated. And I will say that like I was comparing it to the self-driving car. Like, there are definitely things that humans are better at that a machine just can't do right now. Like, we might not be able to pull context out of a business document and understand that it's important right now. But we can automate like the really repeatable things. So we're knocking out like 90% of what a normal human is doing in a pen test, the product is doing.
So Zach, are you afraid of robots taking over the world, or?
It's a little scary at times.
Okay, just checking.
Yeah.
Has any of the recent advancements, since 2022 and all of our LLM GPT overlords got thrust upon us, have any of those advancements given you folks different areas to investigate or apply some of those these new large language models and that technology to facilitate some of the things that you're trying to do in some of the areas that you just said? Right now, humans are better, but maybe not after some of these.
Yeah. I think there's usually when people ask can AI do this thing? Like for some reason, everybody assumes like LLM is the only type of AI or machine learning these days. So, I would say we have thought about several use cases for LLM. Like I said, like understanding the context of a document to know if it's like business critical. That's probably a great application of an LLM. But in like the past, using like reinforced learning or any other type of strategies in ML, classifying documents is a little harder. But in general, I think advances in AI, and I think making it more accessible is the best part. And that I think a lot of people, when you say like, what's the AI? Like you want to apply AI or machine learning to very specific subsets of problems. Like you can't just be like solve pen testing with AI. Like that's a giant problem set. You got to get super specific. And so we have different types of ML applied for super targeted problems in our product, and it works well.
It's really great that I love that you disassociated like the whole AI and from the LL, because I know I get frustrated because like right now everything around AI and ML just seems to be focused on those things that generate random bits of text, and it's really frustrating because there's so much more to the things. And it's really cool to hear you say, and I just want to reinforce it, ML and this stuff applied in very specific areas for very specific tasks can do wonders. Like there's just amazing things you can do with that, and trying to and thinking that generalizing that it's going to take over the planet or whatever is just such a silly thing. And it's great. It's just great to hear someone else have that grounded view and be able to talk about that grounded view in a product that you put out. It's really awesome.
We do have a good counterpoint in the comments here. Just saying.
I am also curious about, like, from the defender side of things, I don't know how much insight you have into this, but if things look very different than a human attacker, I guess, like, I just, there's this conception I have in my mind of AI being really like noisy and clumsy.
I would say that it, like, the strategies we've employed to, like, our product employs, it is extremely noisy. Like we're not a nation state where we're trying to backdoor your XE utils. Like we're loud and we don't care if you spot us. But I think the interesting counterpoint is we've noticed that you actually don't need to be stealthy, because when you move at machine speed, like it's really hard to react to machine speed. So
that's a really good point.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
Because that kind of then relies on like your defenses being machine speed.
That's right.
Automated.
Yeah, so your detection needs to be at machine speed. Your prevention needs to be at machine speed. And we've noticed that a lot of our recommendations that we've discovered along the way are helping organizations tune those defensive tools to be more effective against machine speed type attacks.
Dang, that is going to up-level a lot of people, I think.
I mean, I know, Kimber, you had SOC experience as well, but it's a really hard conversation when you have to tell a customer, yeah, we saw this. We just didn't get we saw this thing happening. We just didn't get to it in time
Right. And
to stop it. So we'll tell you about it. But
this is why incident response is such an industry, right?
yeah.
Because the things happen.
Yeah.
What are we calling this, like continuous attack programs? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's hard to classify what it is.
The Iron Dome.
Yeah, I think
Thunderdome.
Continuous security posturing. I don't know. I just made up a term.
Posturing, careful.
I want to give you a chance to talk a bit about a report. I love this new layout. You folks have put out a proactive cybersecurity unleashed. Am I supposed to say it bombastically because it's in bold? It's great, and you've actually managed to condense it into. I say condense. It's a decent sized report, but you've got 3 core concepts that you kind of put into it. I was wondering if you could talk a bit about what those 3 are to folks.
Yeah, sure. So the 3 main points, I'll distill it even further down, are really credentials are a major problem still to this day. I think we're going to be battling credentialed attacks for a long time. The second point is the traditional vulnerabilities and misconfigurations in products that allow an attacker to gain access to things. And then the third one is staying ahead of emerging threats. And like I was talking about, helping tune your defensive products because they're a lot of times out of the box. Guess what? They aren't as tuned as you would hope them to be. So yeah, the first one, identity-based attacks. I think really what we've seen is it's really hard to distinguish actions by a legitimate user and an unauthorized user or use of that user. And I do think in this case, I think machine learning can help a lot on the defensive side. I think we're seeing more detections around like impossible travel, like this user has not accessed this system before. So I think we're starting to see some really good movement on detecting abuse of identity. But to this day, like I would say that what makes pen testing and attacks, like you read all these breach reports, it's use of legitimate credentials, and it's pervasive. And the second one is vulnerabilities and misconfigurations. So diving deeper into that, there's an overwhelming amount of organizations out there that are just still struggling with the basics. Like they have tens of thousands of CVEs that they're chasing after in these reports. It's really hard to prioritize those vulnerabilities and what they should get after first. And so hopefully by using our product, they can see, hey, these are the select few that led to the most access in your environment. And we're helping further prioritize those vulnerabilities, same way you would in a human-driven penetration test, that super prescriptive prioritization. Our product is giving a similar prioritization.
That's great.
And then lastly, I won't repeat the helping improve your tuning of your security tools, but one of the cooler things I think we're doing now is the emerging threats. And so some of our team is focused on, as soon as a CVE comes out, determining if it's actually important and understanding if it can lead to something bad. And then we also then have a huge database of all application fingerprints that our clients have. And so when we see something that might be important out there, we're looking through all our clients, making sure, hey, like you actually have this on the internet and this came out like an hour ago. We're emailing them, we're telling them, hey, like we think this is going to be exploited potentially soon. So you might want to do something about this patch as soon as you can. So we have we call it like our end day rapid response program. And so what we're doing is communicating proactively to our customer base when we think something could turn nasty. So that's awesome. That's one of the programs that I'm pretty passionate about.
I selfishly want to give a shout out for, Zach and the Horizon 3 team have been great partners for collaborating on research and helping us get detections out as well, or, prioritization. All of those things are usually in the end, kind of an opinion. It's an educated opinion. it's an educated hypothesis, but it takes a lot of folks to come together and get it across the line. So Zach and the team at Horizon 3 has been really great to work with from the gray noise side. So I just wanted to share that appreciation and give kudos there.
Yeah, you guys are also fast.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah,
machine speed, Bob.
It's kind of scary though to think that like if a couple of random dudes on the internet are doing this, like we're going to talk about APTs today, that I'm sure that these kind of strategies must be employed by nations. So
actually that is a great segue. So we are, as promised, we are going to talk about China today. We were going to try to do a special episode. It just did not happen. Turns out that actually having real jobs makes it hard to do a podcast on a more than once a week basis. Who knew? Also did not know you starred in this movie, Glenn, but it's actually really cool that you have a good second.
You made this joke last week. Move on.
All right, then. I'm going to go through a couple of the ones. So the first that we're going to go through, I'm going to breeze through these hopefully so that we can all have a discussion about like how real these things are, and we may just end up talking about the last topic because it's on every podcast I've listened to that's around politics or cyber since last week. It's still part of that, so we will probably just talk about TikTok at the end of it. So as folks might know from the news, the U.S. Treasury Department sanctioned the APT31 hackers. And you can read through all the details on this one, but they sanctioned them. I mean, we'll see. We'll have a discussion whether that's actually really important or anything or not. Volt Typhoon is made it back into the news with their attacks on water facilities across the U.S. and beyond. And that got some more attention. And I know the water sector attacks are something that Emily has been focusing on in the past few weeks as well. So hopefully we can have a good discussion then. It turns out that the U.S. isn't the only targets for China hackers. They apparently went after the politicians over in the U.K. as well.
Not the bangers and mash.
I know, not the bangers and mash. You got it. Like, why would you want those anyway? Just by the way, it's terrible food over there. So
send your email to Bob.
Their operations saw political dissidents and critics of China targeted by sophisticated phishing campaigns, resulting in some email systems and networks being compromised. So this is not the only one that's got compromised systems. We also got stuff in the UK that's been compromised too. And the thing that hit us very recently, because we have to care about this because we may or may not have honeypots in certain places, is so people might not know, or hopefully you know if you're in cyber. China has this really draconian, weird state secrets thing where like you have to report things to them first if you do business in China or have stuff in China. And they just expanded it to be more nebulous and expanded to a work secrets law, and it could be impacting anyone that does any cyber stuff over there. It may mean like lots of stuff for people that do detection technologies like we do. So we can have a discussion about that. And of course, TikTok. I can't believe. Actually, I can totally believe that the U.S. Congress spent time on so quickly trying to come up with a way to ban TikTok, which is going to be hilarious if they try. So we're going to have a discussion about that too. So we have a lot of avenues where we can all have a discussion about this. So I'm going to get us back into here. And I'm just curious, what any of those topics top of mind for anyone here? Are you all super upset at losing TikTok in the next couple months?
I think that strangely TikTok, well, not strange at all. Like TikTok is the thing that's at the top of everybody's mind. It's the one that my friends hit me up the most about. And I don't even have like a lot of Zoomer friends. It's like, just the people who spend a vast majority of their days on TikTok. Like I've been telling them it's very like, it's symbolic and that it's a very good way of gauging like what the government is taking a look at. I'm personally very anti-TikTok.
So you say that, but I'm not sure it's as benign as that might sound, or as you might have made it sound, because of the three of the podcasts of the many like political ones that I listened to, they were basically going through what the constituents were saying to various lawmakers, and everyone from like the 12-year-old to like the desperate 35-year-old who's on TikTok for whatever reason, we're all able to quote all. Yeah, I'm sorry, I call it like I see it. I'm sorry. they were able to spill out and repeat all the statistics about how much of the U.S. economy that TikTok generates and how much it's responsible for, and how many people are going to be out of work and displaced. They were all quoting the exact same thing. So that means TikTok was feeding them all of those details in their feed. So programming all these little bots like Glenn to repeat back to everybody why they shouldn't take their precious TikTok away. So I think that's good.
Well, I think that's very interesting. This is what I've been telling people, is that like TikTok is indeed like a very effective like propaganda machine. But what I think people are repeating is that it's a very specific kind of propaganda. But what you don't realize is that you're in your own little echo chamber. Like when you're browsing these things, like any kind of social media where you're quickly fed opinions that are just from strangers, or videos that are just from strangers, like you're in a bubble. And that's why it's so effective, is because your bubble is extremely curated. So for every bubble that you have talking about like how good Taco Bell is and how much they love it and how much they would eat it for every meal, there's another bubble over here talking about how awful Taco Bell is and how much they hate it and their tummies hurt afterwards. So like
I feel like we have to zoom out though. Like now I will say there, like, yeah, the issues around like there, I'm open to conversation around it's not great to have all of this data in a way that is accessible or possibly accessible, like whatever you want to argue, by a foreign government who constantly attacks us and other democratic societies, blah, blah, blah. But I also like that's not different than what American social media companies do as well. And correct. So that's where I get like the thing is like I hate that it's focused on TikTok because it's China and it's a political, like it's a red flag or whatever you want to call it. But that's kind of a pun. I didn't mean to. But we shouldn't be. I get frustrated that everyone's focused on like name brand TikTok, not privacy policies, not what data should be accessible by whom and how, etc. So like, while I think there's merits to some of the concerns, I think that the way to address this is not by banning TikTok. It is by approaching this problem holistically. I feel like it's theater, right? It's the 3-ounce liquids on an airplane situation. Yes, like 100%. We could all combine our 3 ounces and have like a bunch of ounces of liquid. So like, what's the point? So I feel like it's theater and it's unfairly targeted, but none of that is because I just saw the funniest video I've ever seen in my whole life last night on TikTok, and I will be happy to share it with whoever after this podcast because I have watched it about 3,000 times.
What does screen time say? How much time you spend in?
It's actually not a lot. It's actually not a lot, but that's because I'm.
I can quit anytime. I can quit anytime. Right, that's what it is. Right,
yeah, no, it's actually true. Like I do have a really good way of like I will. Like, okay, close it and I'm done. But I do understand a lot of people can't do that. Like it is, you have to, it is addictive. Like I'm not going to argue that at all. But to the point, I just argue the points that Kimber made are not unique to TikTok whatsoever.
Yeah, I was going to agree with you. I think that a lot of the fears are really to any social media application. And I think, I don't know if it's true or not. I just saw like Facebook sold all its direct messages to Netflix.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
so that kind of seems wild. So like what's preventing a US owned TikTok from selling all its data to some Chinese company? Like,
I'm a Reels girly and I fully expect that like.
So your TikTok just like 2 weeks later, Reels is.
Yeah. Wait, TikTok. Okay, hold on. Old guy. What's Reels?
Instagram's version of TikTok.
Okay, thank you.
It's delayed TikTok.
Delayed TikTok, only the greatest hits.
So to me, it feels really disingenuous when people are like, "Oh, this is about data privacy." Like this actually really annoys me because that's not what it's about at all. Because like I think everybody's just kind of said, like if it were actually about data privacy, truly, we would be talking about Meta and all of these other companies that are doing these types of things. But we're not. We're letting that slide. We're only focused on this because China bad. And I don't like that.
Do as we say, not as we do.
And I think that's the whole thing that I came back around to in my head was just like, this is a very clear escalation by the United States, in my opinion, of just like directly going after a country.
It's interesting because on the flip side, the TikTok that we have is not the TikTok that is in China, which is kind of a red flag as well.
Right.
And what, like, there was at Black Hat last year, there was a little like recovery station, like a little area carved out with some chairs, and it was hosted by TikTok, and they had folks there, and so I went over and asked questions because clearly, clearly they're there for a reason, right? Like, I'm not saying who's lying or not, but they're there for a reason. So I was asking, about like, because this was a topic last summer too, just less further along in the process, and they had their talking points, which was around how like several years ago they outsourced the data centers to Oracle. They were explaining that they can't access data directly. It has to go through a third-party broker, and there's all these oversights and stuff. So what happened with, is that true? And I researched this last week trying to find out the status of it, and I couldn't find a recent article on it. But like, what happened to that? It happened, as far as I can tell. It cost a ton of money to do. What about that, if true, did not satisfy the Congress or the legislators in this issue? Like, if it truly is separated or whatever. So like, the stars aren't lining up to this constellation of what each side is saying. And then on the like TikTok, I mean, China has banned American apps too. So like, I don't know if it's escalation or if it's like a tit for tat like situation.
Right. And that's why I come back to it being like a symbolic thing, because like what really did happen, and also should the United States have a say in where companies are hosted to begin with? I think that's where the privacy thing comes in with for me.
Actually, Sam Sanderson has this was a great point that I heard made, and this is it's very succinctly said here. So if the ban does happen, all it means is that the app stores won't hold it anymore. It's not going to get deleted, so there's no one's ever going to get a security update ever again, or they're going to go try to find it on a third party like alternate app store or whatever, which you can do in the EU on iOS, by the way. So like, this actually is
web based, right? It's going to be a lot of time and money spent on something that's going to be effective like 1% of what they think or hope.
It's kind of like the sanctions, like.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I was gonna pivot to another, like, one of the China, like the work secrets thing. I have to like just take an exhale thinking about it. So it's kind of related though, right? So with the work secrets, is it called legislation in China, or is it just
regulation?
The way it is.
Yeah.
Regulation. Yeah. Essentially is like expanding the definition of secrets to include like things that are the proprietary for your company. So if it's something that's proprietary for your company that would cause harm to your company, if a competitor knew about it, then you have to share that with the government. And what could possibly go wrong with that, right? Like, even in recent Microsoft breaches, which has been a top topic, they have specifically called out that their compliance to these regulations has directly helped their attackers compromise their systems. So like, we haven't even got down that path, and we're already seeing how it's enabling the attackers to essentially hostile nation state to democratic society. So we're at a point where like, and I get really fired up about this, so like, I don't want to take up the whole time, but like, we're at a point where it's time to start choosing, which is really hard to say. Like, we have the complexities of a global economy, which we are all very well aware of after early days of COVID. So we have a global economy that everything is intertwined, and then we have countries that are attacking other countries on this non-tangible level, and those things are directly at odds. And so I think it's all of these topics have to be floated up to where it's like almost like a NATO type agreement, where it's like, we're gonna have to go like all in on this, or we're going to have to just roll over. I mean, I'm not saying roll over. I'm just saying like you can't have both. You can't just say like, no, we're banning this, but go ahead and send us your goods, or vice versa. Like,
Well,
Internet
Justin
NATO.
had a really interesting comment just a few minutes ago about, I wonder why more people aren't concerned about Temu. Like, that's
yeah,
exploded. Where was that a year ago? Like, what
yeah.
is going on with that? Like, I think that's kind of
People
interesting.
might not know what that is, Emily.
That's fair. It's what I guess it's like
Amazon?
AliExpress, but 2.0.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
AliExpress. Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's
It's retail.
ginormous. Yeah.
Yeah. The work secrets thing, though, I am really interested. I also admittedly, like, I had to read about this multiple times before I could like really wrap my head around it. I was like, this can't be real. This isn't real. I'm not understanding this. But no, I was. And it is as weird and strange as it seems. And I'm really curious what some of these major corporations are going to do. Like, what you're kind of in an
Yeah.
impossible spot. What are you going to do? Like, Glenn, to your point, like, there's what's the option?
It feels like this is a line in the sand for me, at least, and that's obviously biased because we're in the cyberspace, but like, there's been, um, just lost my train of thought. I was looking at my notes because I had some notes on this, but yeah, like it's a line in the sand because you can't do both. You're looking for, so for example, there's been a regulation that was passed, I think last year or something, where it was essentially saying if you are aware of a vulnerability, you have to share that with the government within X number of days, hours, whatever it was. And that really didn't get a lot of pub. And I don't know if most people are just kind of ignoring it or
That's definitely probably the most scary thing. I
yeah,
think
because then you're
I
handing over your O days, N days
yeah,
directly
China
to the attacker.
basically stockpiling a bunch of vulnerabilities, and whether they choose timely disclosure or no disclosure, it's up to them. And you can see the effects of it. I don't know if you guys know what the Pwn to Own competition. It's like
Yeah.
the hacking competition where researchers try to
They're
find
getting
zero
burnt. Yeah.
devices. And so Chinese researchers used to compete in this competition all the time. But once that law passed, you see no representation out of China. And there were such talented researchers publishing
Yeah.
really incredible things in that competition. And now thinking about all of those vulnerabilities, like just that subset now being behind Chinese control is like, there's a lot of power there.
Like it's become a liability to do the research or have that knowledge. Like you're essentially breaking the law or you're at some sort of risk. If you're in China and you're doing security research or something, if you ever know something that the government doesn't know, now that especially as it's expanded to work secrets, then you are a liability to whatever you're protecting or working on or whatever, and you're supposed to share that out, and that is shocking.
If I could segue into the other, I'll broaden the topic to just APTs, but I was hoping to get from both Emily and Zach, and everyone else can chime in too. I have to say, and like maybe I'm one of the few naysayers in this, but like I don't really believe the hype in the water security thing. Like it can touch IT networks. No OT networks have been directly hit, as far as we publicly know.
You mean the use of default passwords? Is that considered?
All I'm saying is that we don't know. We haven't seen any major destruction, major disruption, directly against OT from any of these things. We have a lot of like hype. We have a lot of alerts. We have a lot of be scared. We have APT capital everything and numbers everything. But so how real, and like maybe Emily you first and then maybe Zach and then everyone chime in too. Like how real is this? How real do you believe this actually is?
I mean, Y2K was real. There was a lot of prep that went into it beforehand to make it not a complete disaster that people were like, oh, this got overblown. It's like, well, did it though? Because if you kind of knew what was going on the other side, like you knew that it was a real thing. I don't think it's overblown. I think perhaps the way we are ringing bells and whistles is maybe not the most effective, because I think this is different from dealing with IT specific technologies, right? Like OT technologies, the people who maintain these things are maybe not, they're not listening to this podcast. They're maybe not reading the same news sources we are. That's just not their like typical kind of like what they're paying attention to. And so as much as we kind of in the security community are concerned about that, I think there's also this like crossover that has to happen that is sensible and not kind of like, oh no, everything is on fire, oh my gosh, but more just like, hey, security hygiene, like that's a thing we should do. There was a joint advisory that was put out, I think it was in late March, by the FBI, the EPA, and CISA about water and wastewater security. And it was like, if you read the like advisory, it's just the most basic, like get your things off the internet, use like don't use default passwords. It's just very, none of it is specific really to OT or like any particular systems. It's just like, please do these things. And so my question is not like, are we overreacting? It's more like, how do we get this stuff into the right hands? Because that to me, I think is the bigger problem here. Like, I think this is concerning. I mean, we've seen kind of, the Volt Typhoon stuff, like, I don't think that was overblown. Like, I think we do need to be concerned, but I think it's getting the right people in the right positions concerned about it too.
It sounds like we need like the AARP version of internet security for OT, IT.
So that's, yeah, I mean, it's like, it's a tough question, right? Because I've talked with folks from like different groups, both here and internationally, who are dealing with this kind of thing of like, it's really hard to kind of get this information into the hands of people who can do something about it. Because when you find these systems, it's like, are we sure that we found the right contact? Are they even going to know what to do when we alert them to it? Like, so I think there's an education component there. I think there's a resourcing and staffing component. I think there's like it's a big like layered approach that I think has to happen. But all of that to say, I don't think it's overreacting. Like, no, we haven't seen anything wild yet that we know of that has made, like TLP clear, but I don't think that means we don't need to be concerned.
I mean, Zach, you said that default passwords are still like the biggest thing. So like, do we need to worry about these super sophisticated O-days that you were mentioning before and that were spread throughout all the different news things we just read through? Like, is that really a thing we have to care about?
I think we have to worry about everything, unfortunately.
Dang it.
Which is the cop-out answer. But it's true. I think overall I would agree. I think, unfortunately, coming from government, what I imagine happens is that there's this really detailed report about these attackers and how so many OT plants or water treatment plants, whatever you want to call, got breached. And then about 24 redactions later, it looks like, please don't use default passwords. And so,
okay.
So
there's a story behind the story that we just can't see because of the reasons.
Yeah, I think unfortunately the government probably doesn't want to burn intelligence about. They know that they use a specific piece of malware in these environments, and if they were to say like this is how you detect it, now they would change their tactics and they wouldn't no longer have ideas about which plants are being breached now. They might not know that initial access method, but they know that, hey, we can look out for these things in these environments. And so it's really not burning your intelligence because it takes a lot of work to build that. And so I think to tell the public sector what you have to do, it basically gets distilled down to these like really dumb, like, what do you mean? Aren't people already doing these things? So
So one curveball that I didn't tell any of you I was going to throw to you for this particular one. It's like there was no curveballs for your specific stuff, but there's a curveball for the general one, Zach. So China, like it's been a flood of it in the past few weeks. And I'm going to just hone in on this particular thing we just talked about here, which is like domestic threat to like operational infrastructure, things like that, or even just critical services in general, or important services like managed services, whatever. Why are we flagging China when there's, in my estimation, an equal domestic threat that we should also be worried about here, but we're not talking at all about that? Why are we all just pointing the finger overseas when we know for like I'm going to just posit that we know for a fact that there's groups internally to the U.S. that are not affiliated with state actors like overseas that have the ability to do this and might do that if things don't go their way at some point?
I would say the obvious answer is because we have the intelligence to be tracking those groups already.
The Constitution has limited some of that internal intelligence versus external intelligence.
Yeah.
But you could say the same about terrorism too, right? Like domestic terrorism versus foreign state terrorism.
Yeah, that's why I brought it up. Actually, like I'm actually far more concerned that there's going to be a domestic cyber terrorism event, because that's what I consider these things. I consider any attack on this kind of infrastructure a terrorism event.
I guess I just also don't
criminal.
have that much faith in domestic abilities, because I figure they're all working for the NSA or whoever,
No, I don't know. I do worry a little bit about some of the potential domestic groups or cells that might be prone to doing something like this.
I mean, it's a concern. I still think more about the foreign side because of the ability to respond. Like, if it's very different if Jethro does a thing from Texas against the Capitol building, and then if the government of another large country does something against something on U.S. soil, right? So I think the ability to respond and control and triage and mitigate and whatever are so vastly different that's why it's kind of off kilter, I guess, as far as the concern about it.
Yeah, I would say I think it pairs well with your response. I think it comes down to the authorities for which these government agencies are able to actually intervene. So if you're talking about a foreign adversary or a foreign threat, the authorities are much more conducive to preventing or stopping or disrupting that threat. So you might have this person is known bad person and they have known associates, and you are authorized to go after known associates of this person because they're a foreign adversary. But you talk about that in terms of U.S. citizens or even NATO or European citizens, it's so much more tightly controlled, rightly so, that you can't just start tracking a known associate of somebody you might think is a bad person in the U.S. And so I think it comes down to probably authorities and constitutional protections.
And I think that the fact that there's allies that we obviously work closely with, the UK government, for example, and you don't really hear about things happening where we're sanctioning someone in the UK over a thing, because if someone in the UK did it, there would be cooperation, they'd be arrested, they'd be brought in, it'd be more traditional versus these out of touch, out of reach adversaries.
I guess I also think about from a strategic point of view, doing something as some foreign entity, there's a certain amount of dwell time and research that goes into that simply is, I feel for domestic, there's more in the patterns where you look at things, there's certainly an amount of planning that probably happens. I'm thinking specifically there was some Florida water system that I believe ended up being attributed to somebody domestic, and I'm sure there's an
was that the Team Viewer one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Team Viewer one. Yeah.
But it largely feels so smash and grab when things happen with domestic terror. I don't want to call it terrorism, activism, crazy town. I don't know. There's a lot going on there. We've got a lot of options, but it all feels in common with, it feels very immediate and very sudden and very quick, whereas things with foreign entities feel more calculated,
planned and deliberate.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if that's just
probably
because
about resourcing or resources.
It might just be the reporting that we read on things is worded in different ways based upon who it is, but that's the perception that I have.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I appreciate you dealing with the curveball. I just had to throw that out there because this has been on my mind as these stories have come up, and I wanted to get your take on it because you're all pretty smart humans. So tool time, we're going to breeze through this because we're running late. And actually, I want Zach, if I could, one more question towards you. How hard is it for you guys to keep up with CVE stuff? Because CVE stuff is kind of in chaos right now. So I'm just curious. I mean, are you yet another place that's going to be doing their own CVE feed like everybody else seems to be doing right now?
Yeah, I hope not. We don't have the resources to do that too. So,
Cool.
no, we use tools that other people release to stay on top of things right now.
Cool. So one of those tools, it's vulnerability lookup. We're not going to dig into it much because this is sort of the replacement for CVE search. The folks over at Circle, the Luxembourg cert, they do awesome work. They do great tools. We've actually featured a couple of them already. This is an online service that you can actually use right now if you want to basically pour through a bunch of vulnerabilities. They have tons of sources. And if you want to bring this in-house and use it yourself, they have a really easy setup guide for why it's detailed, but it's an ezy setup guide to walk through. And this will help you keep your internal metadata up to date. You may actually probably have I'm going to get in trouble for this, but I think if you were to run this and bring it internally, you have more information on CVEs than your vulnerability management providers probably give to you that's out there. So I would encourage all orgs to give this a poke, even just using one online. It's a really great service, and I'm hoping to get the folks on the podcast one of these days to talk about all the great work that they do. We're going to do some shameless self-promotion as we always do. And Emily, I am so glad that your organization has embraced the thrunting topic.
Oh, I hate everything. So yes, on April 17th, in a couple of weeks in Philadelphia, we are hosting a threat hunting workshop and happy hour, and it's in collaboration with Grey Noise. So there will be some folks from my team, some folks from Grey Noise there. And basically there's a lunch and then there's a workshop that's a couple hours. So you can kind of like see from folks who are using the tools day in and day out, sort of how we use it. Maybe learn some tips and tricks, meet some other folks who are enthusiastic about using the data. But it should be a great time. So there's a link in the comments in the chat. So please go sign up if you're local, and we'd love to see you.
Get some cheesesteaks while you're there too. My old stomping grounds. We need to have Lewis on because Lewis did an amazing job. I hope everyone listened to. If not, you can still register and watch the video replay of it. The webinar that we did for the honeypots are back. Lewis put together a great both webcast and report, and the report's out now as well too. It's gorgeous. The design team just did an amazing job. You have just grab it and just like go through the graphics. Don't even read you should read the report, but you just have to report the graphics. They did a beautiful job. And this is really cool. We should have Lewis on to talk about this. I know they just did a webcast, people that listen to it, but I think having like a 10-minute redux on it might be really great for everybody because it really explains the history of honeypots and the future of honeypots and our vision of the future of honeypots. So you should definitely take a look at that.
We should also let him have like 10 minutes to just improv because he's hilarious.
He's hilarious. He's actually brilliant. Glenn, could you talk about something that Brianna just put out?
Yes. So Brianna on the research team put out a blog on our Grimoire, which is our more technical labs blog post that I think folks are getting more familiar with in the last several months because Ron's just going crazy with it. But she had a blog this week or last week about kind of a day in the life using SIFT, which we talked about. That's our tool that's basically finding anomalous payloads that are hitting our sensors each day and going from reviewing that data, what SIFT is showing you, to getting a detection and tag out. Because what's funny is we've had in the last several months a lot of tags for really old vulns because these vulns are actually getting exploited and attempted to be exploited online. So it's kind of reprioritized some of our work to say, well, even though this vuln is 16 years old, we need to tag it because it's being used. So it's kind of funny to see on the wire.
And we also kind of tell people what we're reading on a regular basis. And we put that down into a blog so you can go read that to see what we are reading and maybe tap into some of the cool things that people are doing out there. It's actually pretty fascinating. I've picked up some books that I had not read before as a result of it. I think others might be able to as well. We have tags as usual, and we're running late, so we're not going to show any graphs, but we have a ton of tags from last week because of SIFT and all the great work that the detection engineering team does. Like, go everybody. They're just awesome. And we need to talk about Kev. Did anyone happen to get, I don't distract, so I have no idea if there's a Kev or not. Is there a Kev?
Didn't look today.
Anybody from the audience? So. Cool. All right. So this is an accurate slide for a change. So it's been 7 days since the last Kev release, which was Microsoft SharePoint. Oh, who still uses SharePoint? Server code injection vulnerability. Like, no, just throw SharePoint out, people. It's garbage. Just get rid of it.
Do that.
Yeah, please do that.
Put it with your bounty on the street in the dumpster.
After you throw it off the roof.
Or Avante.
Avante. It's Avante. It's Avante. Because we had to make it fancy. All right. So as the closer, like everybody else, we like we've done before. I got to ask what's going on, and this was a weird one. I came up with this one because it's spring, and I'm going to go first because I don't normally go first. I came up with this because it's spring, and I'm going to be doing the garden again this spring. And we haven't really lived in rural areas before we moved to Maine. And we have animals all around where I am now, all sorts of one, including deer, including everything. And the first garden kind of got eaten up because we have animals, and because I wasn't a farmer back then. I'm a better farmer now. I'm not a great farmer. I'm a better farmer. And we got told that bundling up like human hair scraps into bundles and putting it around the edges of the garden will cause deer to stay away longer than they might otherwise, because they will smell the human scent and they will not come around. And it turns out that actually does work. It was an odd thing to hear, but it actually does work.
It'll work for your dog's hair. I don't know. I don't think you have a dog, but your dog hair too.
That's cool. That's neat. So for everybody else, I'm going to start with Glenn. That way you can't steal anybody else's. What is the most unusual but useful advice you've ever received?
I honestly could not come up with like this didn't trigger a memory for me. So I'm just going to say something that would be advice from me to someone else or whatever, which is therapy is not what you think it is. And everyone should go to therapy.
Fair.
So I know that doesn't fit your qualification, but
it's all right. It's all right. It's all right. I'm used to being disappointed by you. It's fine. Emily, what is the most unusual but useful advice you've ever received?
I feel like I'm seeing a connection between Glenn's advice and also, well, anyway, so a little different, but like the most, I mean, kind of unconventional advice, but like useful was like, I remember a few years ago, a manager that I didn't report to him, but I worked with him, and he was like, you really need to stop caring so much. Like, you care too much. Stop. He said it a little differently, but at the time I was like, well, that sort of hurts. And then I was like, oh no, I get it. I want to live past the age of 35. So.
I mean, for what it's worth, not a lot of benefit on that flip side of 35. So I'm just saying, Kimber, I will go to you next. How about you? What is the most unusual but useful advice you've ever received?
You know, we're going to go along with the self-help theme here, that if journaling is hard for you, start a text thread with yourself and text yourself every day.
That's great.
Oh, that's a really great idea.
And do you ever text yourself and still get like surprised when it dings?
No, Glenn, because that's how the technology works. Yeah, okay, there you go. There you go, Glenn.
Definitely not.
Zach, again, thank you for being on. And you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but what is the most unusual but useful advice you've ever received?
I don't know that it's that unusual, but it's helpful. Is someone told me, learn to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
I like it. Very cool.
That's great for this field.
Yeah. Overwatch, you got one? You're part of the team. Useful, not unusual. No one thinks about you as much as you think. Yeah, this is great. But no one thinks about you as much as you think about you. Related to things like, that is absolutely perfect. Awesome. Well, Zach, thanks for your insights. Hopefully we can get you back on the podcast at some point.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Really, really. Oh, we got one. We have a great name a plant after yourself and say nice things to it. Easy way to increase positive self-talk by Justin.
That is so wholesome.
Wow.
Can I get a plant for Bob and name it Glenn?
That poor plant.
Wow, yeah. You don't want to do that to a plant. You're so mean to plants, Glenn. I don't know. It's terrible. All right. Well, everybody, thank you for joining in. Thanks for everyone joining in the comments as well. And we will be talking about XZ next week. So I'm going to let you know that ahead of time. We're going to have a lot to say about that in things that you might not expecting us to say about it too. So please join in for that one. It should be a pretty good ride. And so again, everyone, thank you for joining today. And we will hopefully see you again on the next Stormwatch. Take care, everybody.
Bye.